My daughter was only 5 the year she disappeared. That day, she went downstairs by herself from the apartment to look for me. But she vanished on the long staircase. Even the police couldn't find her. She became a cold case. Soon after, we left that place of sorrow with our son. We never went back. One night many years later, I happened to see a photo taken by our old neighbor. On the peeling wall at the stairwell landing, a human face had appeared. It looked exactly like my 5-year-old daughter. I saw the photo on Moments. The person who posted it was Tom, a former neighbor in the same building, and also my distant cousin. We were close. I stared at the human-shaped outline on the wall in the photo for a long time. The more I looked, the more unsettled I became. Because I remembered something. Once my son woke from a nightmare, mumbling one sentence indistinctly. "Sister is crying inside the wall." At the time, I thought he simply missed my sister. But at this moment, looking at this photo, I only felt a chill down my spine. Back then, she disappeared for no reason. We searched the whole neighborhood and found no clues at all. Now there is a lead. The reason we couldn't find her back then was because she was inside the wall. In the middle of the night, I was covered in goosebumps. I shook my sleeping wife awake and asked her, "Look at this photo, that outline on the wall, what does it look like?" She answered me, half asleep. "Doesn't look like anything, it's just the wall pattern." I paused for a moment, then still said our daughter's name. "Do you think it looks like her, Mia?" Her eyes cleared instantly. Then after a second, she yelled at me impatiently. "It's just a wall pattern. Are you crazy?" In the middle of the night. I was stunned. I hadn't expected that kind of reaction from her. "Don't think about that anymore. It's been so long. If you have the energy, you'd better think more about our son." After saying that, she turned her back to me and went back to sleep. I sighed. Our son, Ethan, he's undergoing treatment. The results weren't great, and the cost would wipe out our savings. But then I remembered. The reason I waited downstairs for Mia back then was because of my wife. She was upstairs calling to me, saying to let Mia get some exercise, to have her walk down by herself. I just stood below, waiting foolishly. Thinking of this, my mind was in turmoil. I decided I needed to find out. I was going to find my daughter. Early the next morning, I returned to the old building. I had contacted Tom in advance. He was still living here. He was the last resident of this building and was also preparing to move out. He took photos to post online as a farewell memento. When I returned downstairs, a sudden wave of fear washed over me. My feet involuntarily came to a halt. I stood stunned at the foot of the stairs. Because 7 years ago, I was standing in this exact spot. Stand here and wait for Mia to come down. This place has been a psychological shadow over my whole life. Fortunately, Tom appeared in time to snap me out of it. "Morning, David." I had only just come to my senses from the fear. "Come up, David. The wall you were talking about is up there." He turned and went upstairs. I hurried after him. We arrived at the landing between the 4th and 5th floors, and Tom pointed again. "David, is this what you meant?" I looked up. The wall was a mess, full of textures and streaks. There was indeed one spot that looked like the outline of a face. But it still didn't look as much like a human face as Tom's photo, let alone like Mia. I let out a breath. So it was because of angles, lighting, and other reasons that it looked like Mia in the photo. It turned out I was just under too much stress and had misseen it. At that moment, I was actually a little disappointed. "It's okay now, Tom. You can go back first. Thank you." I stared at that spot on the wall, forcing my imagination to piece the grain into Mia's likeness. "I missed her so much." Tom behind me answered. "Then I'll go downstairs and make some tea. Since you're here, David, come down and have a cup before you go." After he finished speaking, I heard his footsteps turning and going downstairs. I stepped closer to the wall and reached out to touch that streak in the plaster. I thought there would be something special, but there wasn't. It was just ordinary, cold wall surface. I sighed again. If Mia were still alive, she would be 12 now. She should be blossoming into a graceful young girl, happily enjoying life. I bowed my head, turned, and prepared to go downstairs. But a gentle voice sounded from behind me. "Dad, you finally found me?" I felt as if I'd been struck by lightning, frozen in place. I would recognize that voice even if I turned to dust. It was Mia. It was her voice. I hurriedly turned around, but saw nothing. But the wall pattern, that section of the wall, was gently flaking away. I walked over, and in the gap of the wall where dust had lightly scattered, I saw something. I dug it out with force and realized it was a hairpin. A pink hairpin. I went downstairs and entered Tom's apartment. I pretended nothing had happened and just made small talk with him. Then I learned that this old building was about to be demolished. So that's why he wanted to move out. In fact, he was also very reluctant. I tried to probe indirectly, asking him whether this place had been renovated after I moved out, especially the common areas. Tom thought for a long moment before saying, "There was one time the wall was repaired after you moved out. I don't really remember the exact time." My brain seemed to crash, because at that moment, only one thing came to mind. Mia had been built into the wall. Tom was still talking, but I had already stopped listening. I finished a cup of tea, turned my head, and asked him, "Tom, can you do me a favor?" He frowned and asked me, "Oh, that's too formal, David. If there's something, just say it." I want to say, I need to find Mia. Even if it's just her remains, I have to find her. Only by finding her can I call the police again. Only then can I find the person who killed her back then. But I was afraid Tom wouldn't understand. So I put it another way. Come with me to smash that wall. Don't ask why. It was a very old walk-up building with virtually no management. There just happened to be no other residents at the time. So breaking through the wall went particularly smoothly. But once again, things disappointed me. Following the crack in the wall, we smashed a big hole. It almost smashed straight through the wall. But inside, there was still only concrete and wall tiles, not a single other thing. Don't even mention Mia's corpse. Not even a scrap of clothing was found. Tom finally spoke up and asked me, "David, what exactly are you looking for? We can't keep tearing this place apart, can we?" I nodded. It turned out I had misjudged things again. Mia was nowhere inside the wall. So what about that hairpin? And that sentence, was it my imagination? After finishing packing my things, I prepared to leave the old building. By then the sun was already setting, and there were almost no pedestrians on the road. But I saw a ragged old man, like a scavenging vagrant. His hair was unkempt and his beard very long, so I couldn't make out his features. He kept staring at me so intently I couldn't tell whether I knew him. It wasn't until we brushed past each other that I heard him mutter one line. "Every year, a child goes missing. Every year, missing." I stopped in my tracks, about to ask the old man what he meant. He grinned, baring yellow, ugly teeth, smiling terrifyingly. For a moment I was dumbfounded. He then gave a strange laugh and ran off briskly. He moved so fast I couldn't catch up even if I tried. Watching his retreating figure fade away, I frowned. Who was this person? When he said the child disappeared, could it have something to do with Mia? I got home that night, had just stepped through the door when I heard my wife's nagging. "Where did you go again? You didn't go see Ethan all day? Always running around. Have you made any money at all? Treatment costs so much. What are we going to do?" I sat down on the couch, feeling a dull ache at my temple. The more I thought about what that hobo had said, the more it seemed connected to Mia. If I didn't figure it out this time, I might never be able to. I thought for a moment, then said to my wife, "That old building is being demolished. I'm going back today to take care of it. It might take a few days, and we'll get a lot of money." My wife's eyes suddenly lit up. "Really? That's wonderful. Truly wonderful." She finally stopped nagging so much. Night came. I didn't sleep very well. In a daze, I dreamed of Mia, of that long staircase, of the mottled walls. I walked up the stairs, searching the walls for my daughter. But her outline never appeared on the walls again. Instead, half a face protruded from the wood grain of the handrail. I was startled, stepped back several paces, and nearly fell down the stairs. At the same time, within the long stairwell, a sharp sound of nails scraping rang out. I snapped awake suddenly. After recovering, I found that my wife was not in bed. I got out of bed and saw light over by the balcony. My wife was squatting there, using an iron basin to burn something. I tiptoed over. Only then did I see that she was burning clothes. These were the clothes I couldn't bear to throw away, the garments Mia had kept while she was alive. I didn't disturb her, and I didn't even ask why, because it made me remember that incident. Back then, When Mia walked down the stairs alone, my wife was at home on the 6th floor. My heart was pounding. The next day, I returned to the old building. I walked around and finally stopped at a junk shop. I remembered this junk shop. It had been there for more than 10 years. The landlady who ran the place was called Rose. I hadn't seen her in years, and she had aged another notch. Strangely, she could recognize me. "Isn't this Tom? What are you doing back? Haven't seen you in so many years." She was even quite warm and enthusiastic when she saw me. It just so happened I was looking for that vagrant, and she would certainly be more familiar with the surroundings than I was. So I stepped forward to greet her as well. "Rose, it's me. I didn't expect you'd still recognize me. Business must be getting better and better." After a few polite exchanges, I changed the subject and asked her about that strange vagrant. She immediately looked troubled, and after hesitating for a moment, finally blurted out one sentence. "That person, that's not a homeless man. That's my husband." I was stunned and hurriedly asked what was going on. Rose sighed, then said, "He has been mentally unstable for many years, and he refuses to see a doctor." I was about to ask why, and what he meant when he said his child had gone missing. But then I suddenly noticed. This Rose Scrapyard toll station is huge. Besides the reception's front yard and the little house, there was also a large area at the back fenced with wire mesh for storing scrap. It was spacious inside. Some things were piled up very high and blocked the view. It seemed like anything could be in there, anything could be hidden, let alone children. So I didn't ask her about her husband anymore, nor did I ask about any children. I only asked her one question. "Rose, are you short on money?" She froze. The look on her face told me her business might not be doing so well either. It wasn't long before I said goodbye to her and walked back toward the old building. It only takes 3 minutes to walk from the scrap station back to the old building. 3 minutes, far too close. I vaguely remember that after Mia disappeared, the police also searched Rose's scrapyard. But I never searched it myself. Because it was private property, only the police could go in. I couldn't. At that time, I chose to trust the police. But now, with Rose's husband's madness added in, and the thing he said, I'm beginning to have some doubts. As I kept wandering, I noticed that a few security cameras had been installed on the road in front of the old building. These cameras record around the clock and are required to retain footage for at least 1 month. There were identification numbers on them, which I copied down. Then I sent them to Officer Frank Sue on WeChat, telling him, "Please check the footage from these cameras, mainly the area in front of the scrapyard, the front of this old building." Officer Frank Sue replied to me after a while, "Are you still messing around?" I didn't explain either and just sent back one line, "You're indebted to me." Officer Frank Sue was the detective in charge of Mia's case back then. He promised me he would find Mia. He said it was a small matter, 5 years old, such a big kid, and she hadn't left that building. How could she possibly be gone? So he was careless, so he owed me. Before he gave me any news, I wandered around near the old building for another day. But there were no discoveries, and I didn't even run into Rose's husband. The sun was setting again. Officer Frank Sue finally replied to my message. "Is this your wife?" The image loaded a bit slower than the messages, and when it finished I was stunned. I saw my wife standing in front of the old building. She was wearing a bright red dress, like a ghost, standing motionless in front of that old building. I was dazed for a long while. Although the surveillance still isn't very clear, I would recognize my wife anywhere. That red dress, I would recognize it too. It's hanging in my wardrobe. And the timestamp was from a night 3 days ago, a little after 1. I was already asleep by then. Officer Frank Sue's message then came through. The scrap station didn't show anything unusual either. The only problem is this footage. Is the person inside it your wife? I thought for a moment and didn't reply, but made a phone call instead. Officer Frank Sue answered quickly. I got straight to the point and said, "I need you to do me one more favor." After hanging up, I stood there in a daze for a long time. What I asked Officer Frank Sue to do had nothing to do with my wife, although I also thought there was something very wrong with her. But I had to figure out what was going on by myself first. So I went straight back home. Only, when I pushed the front door open and called my wife's name, there was no answer inside. I went inside and found the whole apartment empty. Only in the metal basin on the balcony were there still the traces of something that had burned last night. My wife was gone. I hurriedly dialed her number, but it was useless. It was turned off. I sent her messages on WeChat and called, but there was never any response. Where did she go? I also searched the house thoroughly and found she hadn't taken any luggage. That is to say, she left very decisively. Or rather, she was anxious. She didn't even take the medicine from the bedside table. I stared at that pile of pills and fell into thought. There were too many medications. She clearly hadn't been taking them as prescribed. I checked the time and had to call Ethan's school. Because today was Friday. According to plan, I was supposed to pick him up from boarding school and spend the weekend with him. But my wife's sudden departure made that impossible. I had Ethan's homeroom teacher transfer him to her, made up an excuse, and had him spend the weekend at school for the time being. Ethan was well behaved. He didn't ask anything and agreed to me immediately. I remembered the sleep talk he used to have when he was little, so I still asked him one question. Ethan, you used to say things like sister is inside the wall. Do you have any memory of that? Ethan said, for a moment, then answered me. I remember now. It was Mom who told me, not me saying it myself. I see. My wife's problem was more serious than I had imagined. Imagining Ethan as chronically ill was no longer the worst of it. What she wants to do now is the real question. I reminded Ethan about the details of daily life, then hung up the phone. What I have to do next is find my wife. But just as I stepped out the door, I saw a flash of red clothing cross the glass of the fire door in the elevator lobby. I rushed over and pushed the door open. But the hallway's motion sensor light only came on after I opened the door. There was, of course, no one anywhere in sight. A chill, however, quietly pierced through my body. Goose flesh had risen on me for quite a while. I still went out, taking advantage of the darkness to search every place my wife might have gone. But don't even mention finding her. There wasn't even the slightest clue. None of our friends or relatives had seen her. No one had messaged her or called her. As the places she had been to grew fewer and fewer, I began to panic. It was a small town to begin with, and in recent years my wife had hardly gone out at all. She really had nowhere to go. Until the end, I had searched almost every place I could think of. Night deepened, the evening breeze slowly rising, as if a heavy storm were about to break. I was completely panicked. Calling the police was useless. If an adult has been missing for less than 24 hours, they won't take the case. I tried hard to think of places my wife might go, and couldn't help but think of that old building, the place we used to live, the place where Mia disappeared. I hurried over. When I reached the ground floor, lightning flashed across the sky. I looked up just as thunder began. The thunder sounded like someone's angry roar, rolling down into this ruined building. I sprinted up the stairs and returned to our former home. The moment I opened the door, I seemed to see that vivid red shadow again. But in the blink of an eye, it was gone. I rushed inside, but this was the last place I could think of. Where else would she go? Just when I was completely at a loss. At the doorway, a figure suddenly appeared. David, what are you doing here? I heard a strange noise and thought someone might be breaking in. I just realized it was Tom who had come. He was the only one still living in this building. I was at a loss for words as I looked at him. He seemed to notice my embarrassment and hurriedly said, "It's okay, David. Come into my room and tell me slowly. Maybe I can help with whatever problem you have." I heard that it started pouring rain outside, and the thunder kept rolling. I could only nod slightly. Back in Tom's room, the bright lights finally steadied me a little. My wife vanished under mysterious circumstances, and I was truly at a loss. I honestly needed a little help. Tom was perfect for the job. Yesterday, he even helped me smash through a wall. He didn't ask a single question, didn't utter a single complaint. So while he was making tea, I also spoke up with my thoughts. "I've run into a bit of a problem." Tom answered me without hesitation. "David, just say it. If you and my sister-in-law hadn't looked out for me back then, I wouldn't have even had a job. Whatever it is, just tell me." I sighed and told him everything. Why I had knocked down the wall yesterday, and why my wife had left home today. Tom listened carefully, then frowned and pondered for a long time. "So your sister-in-law, is that seriously ill?" No wonder she said several times she wanted to come sit with you, but wasn't free. All I could do was sigh again. Suddenly, Tom looked up and asked me very seriously, David, did she really go downstairs then? I was stunned. My thoughts also began to slowly come back. At the time, I waited downstairs for Mia and couldn't find her. I asked her sister-in-law. She said Mia had indeed gone downstairs, so I believed her, and then we all went from house to house asking, searching, looking. No one had seen Mia. It was only me who didn't thoroughly search my own home. Tom fell silent too. After a long while, he finally managed to say, But sister-in-law, why did she? I interrupted him in time and asked back, Do you know the junkyard nearby? Tom frowned and asked me back. Rose runs it. It's a big operation. Seems to make a lot of money. Anyway, she's pretty well off. But does she have anything to do with our situation? I thought for a moment, then continued. Maybe what she makes money from isn't just junk? Do you know her husband went crazy? Tom nodded, but still asked in confusion. I know, but it can't really have anything to do with our situation, can it? I also recounted what had happened downstairs yesterday when I left here. Tom looked even more puzzled. What? He mentioned the child went missing. Could he have done it? After all, he's a lunatic? I shook my head as well and explained. No, the person I suspect is Rose. That scrapyard storage backyard is ridiculously huge. Anything can be hidden there, let alone a child. As for her husband going mad, he was probably poisoned after discovering something. Tom was stunned. This can't be, right? In a scrapyard. Is that really possible? I took a hair clip out of my pocket and answered firmly. It's very possible. Look at this. Trafficking children like this will definitely leave traces. He still frowned and asked, But at the time, wasn't your sister-in-law the prime suspect in Mia's case? How does this scrapyard come into it? I shook my head to indicate. I just didn't search my own home immediately. That night, I was out looking for Mia everywhere. Your sister-in-law stayed home all night. She could have taken 10 minutes to carry Mia over. Tom understood at once. Because it's Mom, the child won't cry. Is sister-in-law hiding in the recycling yard now? Is she being controlled by Rose? I continued. Help me. I need to get into the recycling yard. Tom looked up. My expression was resolute. He could only nod. It was still pouring rain outside, but that also made it a good time to break in. The thunder and rain would mask the sounds of us sneaking in. We were getting soaked, preparing to get in through the side chain-link fence. Tom had even brought a pair of wire cutters for that. He easily cut an opening, and we crawled inside. Inside, it was like an apocalyptic ruin. Large raindrops hit the metal, the clamor rising and falling. Rust water wound and flowed underfoot. That smell couldn't be washed away even by the rain. We didn't dare turn on a light. We could only rely on the occasional lightning to guide us. Look, over there, a little house. Before long, we finally found a tiny wooden hut among the pile of junk. Not much bigger than a roadside portable toilet. Tom cut open the big padlock. I pushed the door open and realized this was the cellar entrance. Sure enough, something's wrong. Because the wooden shed keeps out the rain and the threshold is raised, the space below won't flood. After I started going down, I turned on my flashlight. Below was just an ordinary cellar, and it was empty. Tom was puzzled too. Why is this empty? I came to a blunt conclusion. There are so many discarded items on the ground. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't make sense to leave such a good place vacant, unless it's just that nothing is being stored here right now. Tom was even more astonished. This is where they keep people? I shone my flashlight around and then saw a wall. It had been plastered with cement. This wall is way too out of place. It might be because of the dampness, so it looks like it was built not long ago. Break it. I took the pliers from Tom and slammed them hard against the wall. With a bang, the cement wall was cracked in places. Inside, a strip of pink clothing was peeking out. I got goosebumps all over. Tom beside me was also dumbfounded. There might be children inside. The evidence is solid. Call the police. I threw away the pliers, fumbled out my phone with shaking hands, and immediately called the police. Tom still looked utterly incredulous. He even asked me, David Teefsis, how could this be? This is unbelievable, right? I knew why he was so astonished. In fact, before I had knocked through that wall, he hadn't really believed it either. This scrapyard was actually involved in running a scheme to kill for money. But now the police were on their way. It couldn't be fake anymore. About 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Okay, you go in and restrain the landlady. We're heading out now. After hanging up, I motioned for Tom to come outside with me. He didn't say anything more. He was still trembling all over. I couldn't tell whether it was from the cold or from fear. We returned to the ground, walking through the rain toward the gate of the recycling depot. Just around the corner, and you can see the main gate. There was a police car parked at the entrance. The red and blue beacon on its roof was especially conspicuous in the darkness. I quickened my pace and ran out. The small reception room next door was lit as well. When I pushed the door open, I saw a familiar face. Rose, sitting on a stool with her head bowed, saying nothing. Standing beside her, hands on his hips, and wearing a stern expression, Officer Frank Sue. Seeing us enter, Officer Frank Sue didn't say any unnecessary words. She has confessed to everything. Next, we'll wait for my colleagues to come support us and search the entire scrap station. Thank you for your hard work, but until the evidence is secured, you don't need to do anything else. Go home, shower, and rest. Keep your phone on. We'll definitely need you at the station tomorrow to assist with the investigation. Tom and I looked at each other. None of us expected things to end so easily. What are you standing there for? Of course the police will take care of what comes next. Is there a problem with that? Go on, go back and don't get in the way. Officer Frank Sue added 2 more words. I only nodded, then left the room with Tom. Tom still looked nervous and trembling, as if tonight hadn't completely ended yet. Of course, tonight was still long. Tom went back to the old building, and I drove back to my own place. It was empty inside. My wife still hadn't returned. I took a hot shower and changed into a fresh set of clothes. But I didn't sleep. I sat on the sofa, staring out at the balcony. That night, my wife, when she was burning Mia's old clothes, she must have been very upset too. She must be sad. There are no other emotions, just sadness. Time passed second by second. It's time. I left quickly, went downstairs, and drove off. Facing the heavy rain, I sped along. It wasn't until I was almost back to that old building that I called Tom. I knew he definitely wasn't asleep. Sure enough, he answered as soon as the call connected. Tom, I thought of something. I might know where your sister-in-law is hiding. It's the junkyard, but not exactly. After we broke in tonight, she probably slipped away in the chaos. Where else could she go? She can only have gone back to the building where you live. I've figured out exactly which floor and which unit. I'm here. I'm coming up to look for you. He hung up the phone and happened to park. I opened the car door and even looked up at the old building one more time. It was right here that I had been standing then, waiting for Mia, but I never got to wait for her again. Everything felt like it belonged to another world. But today is different. Today I'm going to find her. I'm coming, Mia. Gritting my teeth, I rushed up the stairs. On the 4th floor, Tom was already waiting there. David? What's going on? What are you talking about? I glanced at him. His hands had just been washed and were still wet. Come up with me. I brushed past him and kept running upward. His footsteps were right behind me. 5th floor. 6th floor. I opened my front door. After opening it that night, I didn't even lock it. I pushed the door open and walked in. There was a smell of fresh dust inside. David, this isn't right, is it? How could sister-in-law possibly? I shook my head and said, I'm not looking for your sister-in-law. I'm looking for Mia. Even without turning back, I could feel Tom's obvious start. The smell of fresh dust. It's not anything else. The moment the wall was opened, that kind of smell was there. Mia, are you finally back? I'm still not sure, but I couldn't hold back my tears. Tom, you brought Mia back, didn't you? Tom was still trying to make excuses. No, how could it be me? It was your wife who did it. She's crazy. I shook my head and said, sorry, my wife wasn't ill then. Her illness only began after losing Mia. She did indeed go missing, but no matter what, I never doubted her. I know how much she loved Mia. I will always love my wife, even if she's not in her right mind. I will always believe her. She couldn't have. You posted that to your moments on purpose to show me, didn't you? To test whether we knew something. Because the night before you saw my wife, she appeared under this building wearing a blaze of red. So you got scared and made those wall patterns to lure me over. Tom was clearly stunned. After saying that, I sighed. I really never once suspected my wife. She couldn't have done it. She loved Mia. Even when she burned Mia's belongings, it was probably to keep me from falling into it. She knew I wouldn't be able to get over it either, because she could no longer come out. Her disappearance was real. It is true that I did not find her, but I always believed her. That fiery red dress was the look Mia liked, so that's why she would wear it. She returned to the old building. Perhaps she sensed that Mia was still here. Tom's voice from behind suddenly grew dark. The circle of friends definitely can't expose me. David, when exactly did you truly find out? I gripped my teeth and said, yesterday, when I was going to break through the wall, you had all the right tools. Tom fell silent. That's right. He had the tools because he intended to do something. He was already going to break through the wall because this old building was about to be demolished, and everything I manufactured led him in that direction. Taking advantage of that chaotic night, he moved Mia's corpse back into my apartment. All of it was to make it fit the narrative that my wife was the murderer. I asked him, why? How have I wronged you? Why exactly? He only sneered. No reason. I just can't stand you. Who says you get to be capable and rich? Who says you get to marry a beautiful wife? Who says you get to have both a son and a daughter? Actually, at first, I didn't mean to kill her. I just saw her coming downstairs, dragged her in to make you all worry for a while. But I didn't expect that. Actually, children can be quite fragrant, quite soft. But those words were like bayonets, plunging hard into my heart. I staggered forward and walked into the bathroom. Inside, it was indeed smashed to pieces. On the floor, there was also a black plastic bag. I knelt on the floor and picked up the bag. Inside were hard bones. I cried even harder. Mia, Daddy's here. Don't be afraid. Daddy's here. Tom's voice continued to sound behind me. She didn't suffer much in death, but after she died, it was pretty terrible. I was pretending to be fixing a bathtub. You see, I pushed her down to the bottom of the tub. Nobody noticed. After things calmed down, I plastered her up with cement. All right then, David, you found your daughter. Why not join her, be plastered into the wall together? Besides, Rose has already taken the fall. Your wife has disappeared. If you go missing too, it probably won't make much difference, right? I heard the iron rod hit the wall. Tom was on high alert. When he ran up after me, he had brought his weapon with him. I stood up holding the plastic bag. When I turned around, he was standing at the bathroom door. I looked at him and asked in return, don't you get it yet? Rose, how could she possibly? The smile on Tom's face vanished immediately. Besides, for such a big emergency, just Officer Frank Sue alone responding. Do you really think that was an official response? He began to feel a little panicked. If you don't help me find a killer, you won't give her back to me. I held Mia tightly. It was at that moment that a beam of light appeared in the lobby. Officer Frank Sue arrived. Following him was his rough voice. Kneel. Hands up. Put your hands on your head. Tom was stunned. The iron bar in his hand also fell to the ground with a thud. But it wasn't over yet, because at that moment, a red figure suddenly leapt out from the balcony. I was dumbstruck. Officer Frank Sue was also dumbstruck. That flaming red figure was rushing toward Tom. Seeing this, Tom also began shouting and screaming. What the hell? I recognized her. It wasn't some ghost. It was my wife. So she had come back after all, and she was holding a knife. When she lunged at Tom, she'd already plunged it in. Tom screamed at the top of his lungs. It hurts. Help, help. Officer Frank Sue, standing at the doorway, was still dumbfounded. Tom crawled on the ground, and my wife kept stabbing him in the back. With each stab, Tom's cries grew more and more miserable. He even began to cry. He began to beg. Save me. Help. Please spare me. Save me. Officer Frank Sue still stood there stunned, and I watched all of it with cold eyes. My wife cried too, but she still didn't stop her actions of torturing and killing Tom. From his back, to his waist, to his thighs. She kept stabbing, kept stabbing. It was still pouring rain outside. The thunder continued. Tom's voice was gradually drowned out by the noise. Or rather, he couldn't call out anymore. He couldn't climb any further either. He lay on the ground like that, reaching out his hand as if he still wanted to live. But he was already dead. His wife also sat on the floor and began to wail loudly. Officer Frank, Sue was no longer stunned. He took out his radio. I only heard a few words. It was so sudden. It ended all at once. Come collect the body. I carried Mia outside. I walked over to my wife. I sat down. I held her in my arms. Cried with her. Afterwards, none of us got into any trouble. My wife was fine too. After all, Tom was a murderer. He was also holding a weapon and intended to attack each person present at the scene. Although Officer Frank, Sue, needs to reflect on himself for failing to stop my wife from killing Tom in time. But even if it was excessive self-defense, it doesn't matter. My wife underwent a forensic psychiatric evaluation, which confirmed she is still a severe mental illness patient. That's how things came to a close. After my wife's condition stabilized a bit, we buried Mia together. We still cried. Ethan cried too. He remembered his sister. We chose a cemetery with a very good view, so that the little her could still look out at the vast world and be bathed in sunlight. Never again will I be hidden in the dark.